Rush of Power is the fourth full-length album from power speed metal band Steel Inferno, a Copenhagen, Denmark-based group who've undergone a fairly significant transformation since they started. In general, their original vocalist Karen Christensen was a very different vocalist. She had kind of a harsher style to start, maybe kind of a Holy Moses type sound that leaned into traditional heavy metal spears that I would maybe compared to like Hellion a little bit, the gruff and commanding type of vocal. And as their sound changed over the course of their first two full lengths, it became something that was a little bit more mixed with speed and thrash metal, something closer to early Artillery, 1985 style power speed metal, something that was certainly Judas Priest oriented in the way that it constructed its sound, but would have fit in with stuff from the early, the first five Metal Massacre type compilations. And eventually they brought in a new vocalist, and their sound hit a benchmark that which was a little bit more professional. It was a little bit sharper, and it had a stronger and very different vocalist beyond that point. With Evil Rain in 2022, they brought in vocalist Chris Rostov, and this guy is kind of a wizard in terms of sounding like that early to mid 80s style vocalist. And it goes beyond his inflections, just his general tone feels like it is from the mid 80s, and he came in having mastered that sound, and his diction kind of has a narrative quality to it in the same way that Hallows Eve on the first couple of records sounded, maybe Drifter, where there's a declarative sense to it, but there's also a gruff heaviness to it when it comes time to make a point. And so those are some of my favorite things out of mid 80s speed metal as it transitioned towards thrash metal and touched upon emergent power metal. And that's kind of where I would slate that record, Evil Rain, and this much improved follow-up, Rush of Power. So we'll cut to a clip here, and I'll talk about what's exciting about this record for me. So after starting anew with a new vocalist and leaning into the qualities of his vocals, we find a more charismatic band, and one that leans into both a new wave of British heavy metal influenced sounds as well as thrash metal in general. And what we get is something nearby kind of a Skeptic's Apocalypse sound with some of the kind of shredding ability you might find on early Hellstar. It's not exactly Nosferatu in any sense, but there is a strong classic heavy metal sound here that is part of their oeuvre. So this isn't just a quick and dirty speed metal record. It's not an average heavy metal record in general. There is a broad spectrum of throwback sounds on this record that are all cohesive as a personality for Steel Inferno. And it might seem a little bit rote at face value. There are a lot of throwback speed metal bands that have heavy metal influences, but I would suggest that this band is particularly good at writing songs that fit into that era. There's not a ton of revisionism here in terms of the new wave of traditional heavy metal, so much as authentic songwriting from that era with its own touch. And that includes the lead guitars, that includes a sound that is what I describe as stubbornly old school speed metal. And they make memorable songs of it. And I kind of go on about that in this review, is that what really stands out here is the authentic quality of the songwriting. And you can feel it all over this record. Now, the preview tracks come a little bit later on in the album, where you get more of a dramatic sense for both the heavier and quicker songs and some of the more involved pieces. But overall, this record starts out catchy, aggressive, and right up front with some of its best points. And I think that makes for an exciting record to approach. It makes for something that is very classic in an authentic way. And it doesn't feel like just another kind of half-assed retro record that is participating. I think these guys have a real passion for this stuff. It really shows in their sound. And I think that they're just some of the finer songwriters in this style around. So that gets a high recommendation for me. It is one of the best records of November this year, and just a band that I would generally recommend people check out especially this record and the one that came before it, Evil Reigns. I think that shows everything they can do with a little bit different production value on each one. They're very complementary records in that sense, and that's the best way to familiarize yourself with this band. Very much worth checking out, even if it looks maybe a little bit generic at a glance. There's a real interesting history to this band, and I think that they're just some of the best at this right now. That's a high recommendation for me. Check it out yourself. It released on November 29th, and read the review for my thoughts much more in depth.